Hi, everyone. I'm Shaheen from The Content Mix, and I'm excited to be here with Carlos Cantu. He worked as a creative director for advertising and marketing agencies in Mexico before joining a brand we all know, Twitter. He works at their European headquarters now in Dublin as director of business marketing for the EMEA region. Thanks so much for joining us, Carlos.
Oh, so happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation, Shaheen.
Yeah, so let's just get right into it. Can you start out by telling us what a director of business marketing does at Twitter?
Yes, sure. I try to be an enabler for the marketing teams in EMEA, Europe and the Middle East, basically, so that they have the resources, I would say sometimes the inspiration and the space to create impactful and relevant plans to engage with our customers. Our customers are brands and agencies that want to engage with their audiences through Twitter. So we want to persuade them that Twitter is the best place for them to do that, and more importantly, to help them have all the information to do that properly, so that they can really take advantage of the platform. Because we know that if they take advantage of the platform and they have positive results, they will keep coming back to the platform, which is our goal, obviously.
Mm-hmm. How does content marketing play into what you do?
Content marketing is really important for us because we truly believe that the best way we can approach our customers or our audience is proving them that we are a valuable partner to them. So through content, we try to prove that thought leadership, data, insights that are relevant to them and that are helpful for them. So we focus. That's the way we focus our content, and we think that if they see that we can provide them relevant information, relevant data, guidance, they will be open to work with us and to partner with us, which is very important. And in the past 12 months, it has been more important than ever because a lot of what we usually did, we're not able to do right now, right? So digital content is an essential tool right now more than ever.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. So I'll get a bit more into that a little bit later, but I wanted to ask you first about like your own professional story, because you're from Mexico. You were working as a creative director. How did you make the jump to working for Twitter? How did you get in at Twitter in the first place? Because it's a place a lot of people would love to work, I think.
I guess I was lucky too. I've been working with Twitter for a little bit more than 6 years now. So when I started, I came from being a creative director. I was the creative VP at an agency, an advertising agency in Mexico. And most of my career, I built it being a copywriter and a creative director in traditional advertising. So I used to say that my career was built on TV with TV ads, 30 seconds at a time, or sometimes 20 seconds at a time. That's how I built my career. And at some point, I realized that what I was doing was not as exciting anymore, and that if I wanted to be a impactful creative, I needed to start exploring new areas like digital, like experiential, shopper marketing even. So I started exploring other areas. And through that exploration, I got to an agency called Chael, which is the global agency for Samsung. It's a Korean agency. Actually, they are part of the Samsung family. And this agency was built to work with Samsung, even though they work with other clients. And it's the number one agency in Korea. I think it's top 2 or top 3 in Asia. And now it's a global agency. So I ended up working there in Mexico, or for them in Mexico, as a creative VP. And that was my first approach to more digital advertising, mobile, because obviously mobile is very important to them. And then someone called me and said, "Hey, Carlos, we're looking for someone in Mexico. for Twitter, Twitter didn't have an office there in Mexico there back then. Sorry. So, do you know someone with this profile? And I was like, sure. So I sent a couple of CVs to them, just like, hey, I think these people can help you. And they came back saying, no, we're looking someone with a profile similar to yours. And I was like, oh, really? Like me? Well, I was a big fan of Twitter. Twitter was my favorite platform back then. So I was like, well, I'll give it a try. So I sent mine, and I was like, well, if you think I could do it, I would love to give it a try. I entered the process thinking I was not the right candidate. Like the whole process, I was like, this is I'm not the right person for this. I know that they will find out, but I want to meet people just to have interviews. If I'll give it a try. It took 7 months actually, because as I was saying, there was no Twitter Mexico office back then, so it was a very long process. At the end, they told me that they wanted me to join the team, and my reply was like, "Wow, I'm excited. If you think I can do the job, because being honest, I don't think I can do it."
Because the job was very different than what you were doing at the time. Right.
Just because yeah, very different. They told me that they were looking someone who could be kind of like a bridge between a tech company and the customers and the agencies. Even though I was not very good at the technical side, I was used to talking to marketers, and pitching to them. That was something I did my whole career, so I could do that. So, but they told me, you're going to learn the technical side so that you can be this bridge between us and them. And it was awesome because Twitter hired me to learn, which is something I really appreciate. So I was Twitter Mexico's first employee, and I started working from home and from Starbucks for a few months. And it was a great experience. There was a huge learning curve, but I at least I felt comfortable because I was not an imposter. Like I told them up front, like, hey, I don't know much about this. And it's been quite a journey. My first 4 years there, I was doing a different thing than what I'm doing right now. They were not looking for a marketer. They were looking for the team was called back then brand strategy. Now they call it Next, and it's a consultant team for the brands and the agencies on strategy and creativity. So I was working with the agencies, just helping them to create better creativity and smarter strategies that could work at Twitter. So that was closer to what I was doing before, So I was working with a lot of my colleagues, a lot of friends that I already knew, were, brainstorming with them, coming up with ideas. With a lot of clients I already knew, a few clients, I was pitching them as an agency one week, and 2 or 3 weeks later, I was back just to talk about something totally different, right? Yeah, it was a great experience.
Cool. So actually, you were a fit for the role in the end because you had the context that they needed, right? So you were involved in this agency community there in Mexico.
Exactly. That helped a lot. And I knew how to talk to brands and how to talk to agencies, right? What I didn't know was the Twitter side. Again, I was a big fan, and I was a very avid user of the platform, but not as a marketing tool, But I had to. I learned that, and it took me a few months, maybe more, but I remember my manager back then told me, hey, Carlos, you've been with Twitter 2 weeks. It was my first meeting with a client. I was going to pitch them for the first time. And I was really nervous because, again, I still felt I didn't know anything about Twitter. And my manager told me, hey, Carlos, you've been here 2 weeks. You spent 1 week in San Francisco. You already know more about Twitter than anyone here. So don't worry,
And it went well. It went well, that first meeting.
It was a weird
one. But you got better at it over time.
Yeah. And at least They didn't like the ideas, being honest, but they liked me, which helped a lot. They trusted me. They were like, "Hey, Carlos, this is not what we need," but we started building a relationship, and the relationship I was able to build with uh, with the brands working for Twitter was very different from the one I was able to build during 15 years as a creative director. They were more open to me. They saw us more as consultants and as partners than the way they usually see their agencies. It was very interesting to me because I was the same person. I just had a different hat, and the reaction and it was so different. And in many companies where I never met the CMO before because they were always busy. They were inviting me to have lunch and to have conversations, and it was a very interesting experience. That too.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So, can you tell us a bit about your current role? Well, how did you end up going to Dublin? And yeah, how does what you do now differ from what you were doing when you first started at Twitter?
Yeah, very very different.
Yeah.
Again, when I started that process, my first process with Twitter, would have never thought of me doing B2B marketing, which is something I never done before, and marketing in general, being the client, as the creative directors usually say, in this region where I had no experience. But well, that's how Twitter works. So after 3 years, I was asked if I was willing to come to Dublin for this role, and I was like, "Are you sure?" Again, once again, I was like, "Are you sure?" I've never worked in Europe. Actually, I had never been to Dublin, and I've never been a marketer, and I've never done B2B. So it makes sense. So I went through that process again. They thought I was the right person for these for two reasons, I would say. The first one is because the audience we serve in B2B marketing are the people I've been working with my whole career. Once again, agencies and clients, right? Marketers, brand managers. So I know how to pitch them. I know what they think of Twitter. I've been pitching them Twitter for 3 years at this point. So I know what they like about Twitter, what they don't like about Twitter, what are their concerns. So I had that, and I've been in the front line for 3 years. So that was interesting. And even though I was not part of the sales team, I was pitching them ideas, and which helped the sales team. So I was very close to them too. And the second one is because since I joined Twitter, for me, creativity is the magic key, and I use that as my my weapon, let's say, and that's what they were aiming that I was gonna do here, like to sparkle the creativity and to push for innovation and creativity. So again, long learning curve. My team, when I joined the team, they were like, "Hey, why is this person our manager if he comes from a different region? If he's not into B2B and he's a creative director?" So they helped me a lot. But yeah, it was a good process, and it was a tough one. But I think we're in a very good place now after a few years.
Mm-hmm. But isn't what you were doing before also B2B, because you were working with agencies the same as you are now? No, that's still B2B.
Correct, but I was helping them with their campaigns. So we were working on ideas, concepts, campaigns that were B2C because all my customers were B2C companies. So I was working on their campaigns. Now I'm creating campaigns for them. So now they are my audience. So the audience is different, right? Back then, they were my clients, and we were together partnering to create a campaign. Now I need to create campaigns to them. Another way to say this is I was working with them on a one-to-one basis, and I was pitching them Twitter actually on a one-to-one basis through ideas, right? Now I'm doing marketing for them. So not one-to-one, but one-to-many.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, you're right. it was not as different as I thought.
Yeah, but you really went from like a sales consulting kind of role to a more really marketing role. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. And not even sales, because I something that worked really well for us is like, hey, we're the consultants. We're brand strategy. Now the team is called Next, and it's an amazing team. They are much better now, actually. But the approach is always, we're your consultants, so we're not here to sell Twitter. We're just to help you do good work. So I was not doing any of the selling, and I'm trying to keep that approach. I'm trying never to sell Twitter. It's not about you buying Twitter. It's just like about making you understand what Twitter can do for your brand. And then if you want to buy it, great. We hope you do. But what are the jobs Twitter needs to do for your brand, or can do well for your brand?
Yeah. So to help us understand more what you do now, can you give us an example of a campaign or a piece of content that's worked really well for you?
Yeah, well, the EMEA team, the business marketing EMEA team, we actually call ourselves the explorers. This is kind of like an internal branding, but we say this because we try to explore always new solutions, right? New solutions that are more impactful or more effective for the same challenges we have. So I say this because I can think of things that are very diverse. Probably one of the latest ones we've done that worked really well. A few months ago, we launched something on Twitter that we call the conversation controls, which is a way for users to decide when they tweet who they want to be able to reply to their tweets. So you can choose that anyone can reply to your tweets, but sometimes people, and particularly brands, prefer that no one replies to their tweets, and now you can control that, or just decide that just your followers will reply to your tweet, right? So we wanted brands to be aware of this. So we had a good content strategy in place, but that was not enough because the brands were not aware of this tool. So to raise awareness, we worked with Robert Kelly. Maybe you don't remember him by his name, but he's very famous because he was called the BBC dad. He was this, like this person for the people that don't remember him. And I'll send you the link so that you can share it on the blog afterwards, so that people can see the video. But like, this person got very famous because he was talking to the BBC. He lives in Seoul, in Korea, and he was talking to the BBC a few years ago on a video call, which are so common nowadays, but back then it was not as common. And his kids just appear in the back and start jumping, and then his wife trying to get the kids out of the room, and that was very famous, right?
Yeah, so I remember it. And I think I've seen the campaign you're talking about too, but tell us about it.
Yeah, so we worked with him. He's a lovely guy, and he was very open to work with us. So not only him, his family, we recreated the whole scene again. So the video started with him exactly how you saw it on that BBC video. And then he started to talk like, hey, I don't know if you remember me. I was famously called the BBC dad because, and then his family starts to appear, but obviously his kids are, I think, 3 or 4 years older, but they were using the same clothes, and the setting was exactly the same. And he was like, I know a thing or two about interruptions. That's why I'm here to talk to you about how you can avoid being interrupted when you are talking to your audience on Twitter. Twitter now has these conversation settings, blah, blah, blah. And so, yeah, that was one of the latest things we've done, and was a very very successful one. It really helped us to raise awareness. That's how we approach it. So we do these. Sometimes we call them stunts, right? That just raise awareness for the topic, and then we drive them to our articles, our blog posts, and more information. And that also helps the sales team to start a conversation with their customers on a one-to-one basis. They send the video to them, or sometimes just the customers send them a message saying, "Hey, I saw that video." Well, yeah, here's more information. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it worked really, really well.
Very cool. Yeah, I saw that campaign. It definitely got my attention. Could you tell us about like the channels that you use? Like, how do you distribute this content that you create?
Sure, it's very unique because Twitter is a channel itself, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and not everybody knows this, but actually, Twitter is a very good B2B channel. We have numbers that are surprising in terms of the B2B2 audience we can reach on the platform. So for us, Twitter is the best channel. We can do actually account-based marketing on Twitter, which is also great because our audience is very niche. We use we have a blog which is huge on Twitter too, where we post a lot of case studies and research and insights, but also everything related to our products and our solutions. We use that. Newsletter obviously is one basic one. Then we work with media partners like publishers, and we do a lot of editorial content with them, paid and organic, both. Sometimes we have content that is relevant to them and they are willing to share organically. Sometimes we pay for something more specific. We do a little bit of paid media, but not that much, being honest, on some other platforms that are helpful, but that's not a main channel. And then our sales team, our sales force is our number one channel, so one pagers, narratives. We do a lot of that. And back in the days, we did a lot of events, experiences, so in-person experiences, installations in sometimes in the agencies, sometimes we created our own experiences. Now we're trying to do that virtually, which is a big challenge. But after a year of working on that, we found very, very good ways of doing that in unique, engaging ways. So we're experimenting a lot there too.
Mm-hmm. So you work with a lot of brands over your career. Could you share any like what are like the most common mistakes you see brands make when it comes to content marketing?
That's a great question. Yeah, and that role I was talking about that let me see a lot of these mistakes. There are a few, but I would say that the first one is, or the two that are fundamental is brands not listening to the audience, going out there with their message without even asking their audience what they care for and what they're talking about right now. So I think before, I always say for brands that I want to join Twitter specifically, like, hey, imagine that Twitter is this huge conversation, that it's already happening. So when you get to a restaurant and your friends are sitting in a table and they're having a conversation and you get there late, the first thing you need to do is you sit down and after saying hello, you get quiet, right? You wait to see what they're talking about. And when you understand and you have something to say, then you start talking. The same is with these platforms nowadays. Conversations are already happening about anything you would like to talk about. Maybe even about your brand, for sure about your category. So first, sit down and listen. See what they are talking about, what they care about, what they want to know about, and then you start your content strategy, I would say. So for me, that it's a very basic one, but it's important. And the second one is most of the brands don't realize that people don't care about their brands. The normal people, the usual people, they don't care about brands. They might care about a few, but two or three, and that's it. So they don't care about your brand. So you need to do something around something they care about. They are not interested in listening to you just because you're a brand. They will be interested if you have something to say that is relevant to them. So, yeah, I know that you have a 3 pages brief with the relevant information you want to give them, but that's too ambitious. Like just first talk about something they care, make them be interested in your brand, and then give them one message. And so it's just one message. So you have to be very strategic on choosing what message you want to give them. Right?
Yeah, and simplifying that message as well, it sounds like.
and uh, telling them is not enough, because yeah, I told them that already once and 2 months ago. You need to send them the same message several times if you want them to really remember it. If you want the message to stick, and you need to find different ways to send that same message so that they don't get bored and they still are interested in hearing that message.
Another thing I was curious to ask you is like if there's any big difference working in the EMEA market versus in Latin America.
Huge
Yeah.
difference, I would say. Yeah, well, maybe the biggest difference is language, and not just because language itself, but because I think the language you use also defines a lot of what you think. The way you approach to problems, the way you approach to conversations is different depending on the language. So in Latin America, actually, my role in Twitter in Latam, it was a regional role, but it was very interesting because I was the head of my team for Spanish-speaking Latam, because we felt that language was so important that Brazil had a separate team, and we were 2 teams. We worked a lot together, but Spanish speaking had one team, and then Brazil, which is Portuguese, had a different team, because we thought, hey, these 2 languages define a lot of differences, so it's better to treat them as. Here, I take care of or work with many markets, many languages, right? So many that makes it tough, because I think Europe or European countries, they focus a lot on the differences. And maybe Latins try to focus more on the similarities, which makes it easier, right? It's easier to focus on the similarities there. So it's easier, for instance, to have a regional campaign there, because you find a common theme and a common interest. Here, I think that countries try to always focus on the differences. So that makes it interesting, but also challenging. Yeah, I would also say that maybe, especially regarding strategy, the strategic level is higher in Europe than in Latam.
Yeah. Cool. So, well, we're getting towards the end of the interview, but I wanted to make sure to ask you for some of your recommendations of like resources for other marketers. But I'll ask you all in one. Like, can you share any like resources you use to keep up to date on trends, any tools or software, and any other communities, publications, podcasts, things like that you think like other marketers should know about?
Yes, but my recommendations are not going to be marketing focused, because maybe that's my main recommendation. My main recommendation is as marketers, we need to be out there looking at what's going on in the world, and what are the new trends and the innovations in other areas. I think we spend too much time just viewing or focusing on marketing, and that's a mistake. Because to be a good marketer, you need to be aware of what's going on in the world. And sorry, maybe this is not proper, but I think that's why Twitter is such a great tool for me, because Twitter is a tool that allow me to be aware of what's happening in the world right now, and more important, people are talking about right now. Like through Twitter, if I'm going to be creating a campaign, let's say on football, I can see what people are talking about regarding around football in a specific country right now. What's the biggest topic in the football world right now, and that's gold. And that's just an example. So for me, that would be the first advice is like, don't focus on marketing. Seek for innovation and creativity in art, in science, in technology, in entertainment. And that's why maybe I'm one of my favorite apps right now is Podcast Addict, because I think podcasts are amazing. And I would say that probably my favorite podcast right now is You Are Not So Smart, which is an American podcast that every time I go through a new episode, this guy introduced very smart people from different areas, a lot related to science, psychology, technology. Every time I listen to a new episode, I get inspiration and I come up with ideas that I can use in my campaigns. So Podcast Addict is one of my best, and then there are thousands of other amazing podcasts there. And what else I could say? Yeah, I think that those would be the first ones that come to my mind right now.
Yeah. Any like book or publication?
Yeah, well, Wired. I love Wired. I love Contagious. I think there are a few great ones. Actually, The Wired has an amazing podcast. Especially the UK podcast of The Wired is really good too. I don't know, like Can't Lion, the Can't Lion webpage is great. They have always new content. You can see the best work in the world around advertising, but now they have much more than advertising. More specific around marketing. I always take a look at the FEs because I think that also shows not only what's interesting in terms of creativity, but also in terms of effectiveness, which is very useful. Around books, I don't know. The last one I read, I'm not reading a lot on marketing lately, but one that I think I try to recommend always is Grit, this book by Angela Duckworth, which is very, very inspiring, and it convinced me that character and perseverance are maybe as or not, if not more important than your capability and your intelligence, which is very, very interesting to always keep in mind.
Yeah, interesting. I'll definitely have to check that one out. Also wanted to ask about if you have any productivity tip or hack to share.
Yeah, well, something I've spent a lot of time working on is the creative process. When I joined Twitter, I realized maybe by working closer to engineers and just seeing how the engineers go through their creative process, I realized how terrible the creative process I was following was. So my suggestion is, if you're going to be brainstorming, there are a few things that help a lot. The first one is keep your brainstorming short. And when I say short, when we do brainstorming, is 10 minutes brainstorms, not more than 10 minutes. And if you do it correctly, that's a lot. That gives you a lot of ideas. And to make that correctly, when you're brainstorming, never judge the ideas. You're not evaluating. If you try to evaluate the idea while you are brainstorming, you won't get anywhere. You need to spend 10 minutes just throwing ideas out there and just trying to get as many ideas as possible. If the idea is doable or not, if the idea is sounds smart or sounds someone else has done it. You don't care about that. You're trying to get as many ideas as possible. The reason for that is because the whole goal is that any idea that you can think of and you can share with the people you are brainstorming with will be the starting point for a new idea. So getting more ideas give you more starting points. So keep 10 minutes throwing as many ideas as possible, and then you will go through this evaluation process, which is a different thing, but never try to do both at the same time. And the last recommendation is for you to be able to have a successful brainstorm in 10 minutes, and that all these ideas you're going to throw up there are useful. At the end, you need to have a very clear brief. And a very clear brief for me is one question you want to answer. If you can put your brief into one question with all the right context, right? But like people know what's the right context and what's the audience, but try to answer just one question, then the brainstorm will be successful. I hope that helps.
Definitely, yeah. That's a super interesting topic. Actually, I could ask you like a million more questions about it, but unfortunately, we've run out of time, so I need to wrap up the interview. So just wanted to ask you one final question about just like your parting advice or final takeaways for other marketers in Europe.
Yeah. No, what I would say is when I started my career, the company I worked for didn't exist. The service we offer didn't exist. Therefore, my position didn't exist. So maybe my suggestion is to always stay open. It's always good to know where you want to head, but never stick to that road just for the sake of it. Be open to exploring other routes that might not feel obvious or might not feel the ideal ones. If the step you take is positioning you in a better direction. So maybe that's the other suggestion is it's not so important the position you are in. It's more important the direction you're heading. So when you take a decision on the next step in your career, my suggestion is never decide based on the position you're taking, but more on the direction you're heading towards with that decision. Always prioritize the future and not the present. And I think that has worked for me.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's a great note to end on. So thank you so much, Carlos, for sharing your insights with us today.
Thank you very much, Shaheen. It's been a pleasure. A pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks everyone for listening in. For more perspectives on the content marketing industry in Europe, check out veracontent.com/mix and keep tuning into the podcast for more interviews with content experts. See you next time. Bye.